After months of gut-wrenching silence, Frank Jenkins has finally broken his silence on the devastating loss of his wife, the legendary Lynn Hamilton. But instead of a quiet tribute, what he revealed has rocked her fans to their core. Raw emotion, startling confessions, and chilling accusations that no one saw coming. His words raise a painful question: was there more to Lynn Hamilton's death than we were ever told? This isn't just the story of a beloved actress, it's a haunting look into what was really happening behind the scenes. Known to millions as the heart of Sanford and Son, Lynn Hamilton represented dignity, strength, and grace. But behind the camera, her final days were far more complicated and heartbreaking. Stay with us, because once you hear what Frank has revealed, you'll never look at her story the same way again. She wasn't just a TV legend, Lynn Hamilton was the quiet heartbeat of every room she entered. A devoted wife, a loyal friend, and a pillar of grace both on and off the screen. So when news of her death sent shockwaves through Hollywood and left fans in mourning, the grief was compounded by something far more unsettling: silence. Her husband, Frank Jenkins, vanished from the public eye. No statements, no interviews, just a void. And into that void poured questions, suspicions, and a storm of rumors. Was there more to Lynn's passing than we were told? Why did Frank disappear when the world needed answers? Now, after months of agonizing quiet, Frank Jenkins has finally spoken, and what he's revealed is nothing short of shocking. In this video, we're diving deep into the heartbreaking truth behind Lynn Hamilton's final days, the emotional weight of Frank's long-withheld confession, and the contradictions that are turning grief into mystery. You'll hear never-before-released details, reactions from fellow stars, and the shocking attempts to silence Frank before he could tell his side. This isn't just a tribute, this is the beginning of the unraveling. And once it starts, there's no going back. Lynn Hamilton was always the embodiment of quiet strength and grace, on screen and in life. Even as her public appearances faded, the love and admiration from her fans never dimmed. But behind that poised and timeless image, a far more painful reality was unfolding. Few knew that Lynn had been waging a private and relentless battle with declining health, a struggle that quietly consumed her final year. According to those closest to the couple, Lynn's condition took a heartbreaking turn behind closed doors. Visitors described haunting scenes. The once vibrant actress had become frail, unresponsive, and heavily reliant on constant care. Some recalled moments where she struggled to speak, while others were stunned to find she no longer recognized familiar faces. The woman who once lit up living rooms across America with her presence had become a shadow of herself, and yet, not a single official diagnosis was ever made public. Her silence, like so much of her life, was graceful, but now, deeply tragic. There were no press releases from the hospital or the family, and it was strange that no memorial services were mentioned right away. For Lynn, who was loved and admired, the silence only added to the rumors. Even stranger was the fact that Frank Jenkins, her husband of decades, had not talked to her at all. Not a single word, not even a social media mention of her death. Why the silence, fans started to ask. Was Frank crying alone, or did he have something he didn't want to say? Now we know for sure that Frank wasn't seen much during Lynn's last few weeks. Some sources said that carers were hired to watch over her 24 hours a day. Even so, neighbors say they seen strange fights between Frank and Lynn's family members, some of whom were said to be worried about how she was being treated in her last months. A family member who asked to stay anonymous said something very scary. There were times Lynn looked scared. Her words were few and far between, but her eyes said everything. There was something wrong, but it gets even stranger from here. Lynn's court matters are said to have changed in the days before she died. According to papers that Entertainment lawyers and judges, her estate plans may have been changed at the last minute. There have been changes that some family members are now questioning who gave them permission. First, why were they in such a hurry? Second, did Lynn fully understand what she was signing? The rest of the world didn't know about any of this until now. What really took place in those last days? Were there warning signs that no one saw? Or was this just the painful end of a long, quiet fight with illness? In either case, something is wrong with the story. But here's the thing. No one saw this coming. Frank Jenkins finally spoke out after months of keeping quiet. What he said shocked everyone and made people want to know more. Frank Jenkins didn't say a word for almost 4 months after Lynn Hamilton died. Not going to public events, interviews, or writing comments. Fans were waiting for him to finally talk about the loss in public, but he didn't say a word. Then he spoke out of the blue. In a tense and intense video that was put online but taken down 48 hours later, Frank Jenkins sat in a dark room. Looking tired and upset in the room, he started, "I've kept quiet for a reason," but his voice cracked. "Not because I didn't care, but because no one was ready to hear what I had to say." The nearly 18-minute video that has since been shared informally on fan forums and gossip sites wasn't a polished press release. It was raw, unpolished, and sometimes scary. Frank began by talking about Lynn's last days, saying that she was having a harder time than anyone knew and that her situation had gotten so bad that there was no longer any "how good life is." He said that doctors didn't see much hope and that Lynn had quietly asked not to be kept alive by machines. But it wasn't how he talked about her illness that made people angry, it was how he sounded. Frank seemed protective, even angry. "People think they know what happened because they saw her on TV, but you didn't know her pain or the weight I carried," he said at one point. Everyone loved that one quote. Many people could relate to the sadness he may have been feeling, but others were shocked by what seemed like putting the blame on fans, the media, and even Lynn's extended family. The big shock came when Frank talked about the rumors of changes to the estate and problems in the family. His words were not clear. Things did change, but not in the way that most people think. Lynn knew what she wanted. "The kids didn't agree with her, but that doesn't mean I did something bad." He wouldn't say anything about the law, but he did make one last. A tweet that caused a stir on social media: "Some things I'll take with me when I die. Not everything is open to everyone." People started to wonder if Frank had something to hide after he said that line, "I'll take to my grave." Did sadness speak, or did something darker? Family members responded quickly. Lynn's niece, who had been open about her aunt's worsening health, sent out a now-deleted tweet that said, "Frank's words were practiced. His quiet wasn't out of sadness, it was out of guilt." Not even Lynn's old co-stars have said, "That's not the Frank I remember." He was calm and grounded, an unnamed co-worker from Sanford and Son is said to have said. There must be something hidden about this man. Fans are now split. Some say Frank was a man who was suffering and finally broke because of the weight of his loss. Others think that what he said makes more questions than it answers and that the whole truth about Lynn Hamilton's death still hasn't come out. But now for the surprise ending, there have been rumors that there may be judicial action coming up soon. When Frank Jenkins shared that emotional, vague video, most people thought there would be backlash. What no one saw coming was the legal storm it would cause. After a few days, rumors turned into official complaints, and now Lynn Hamilton's death may be going into very public and very messy ground. Many celebrity lawyers and family members say that Lynn's extended family is now seriously considering going to court, not just over the alleged changes to the estate but also over having doubts about her medical care and what happened in the days before she died. One of Lynn's nieces first asked the California Department of Health and Human Services in a formal letter whether Lynn's end-of-life care was done in an ethical way and whether Frank's account of her claimed wishes was legally recorded and confirmed. An anonymous lawyer close to the family told a local news outlet, "There were important decisions made in her last weeks about her medical care. Some family members were not told about treatment, asset transfers, or access to contact. That should have been enough to raise red flags, but it didn't stop there." A big red flag was the sudden changes that were made to Lynn Hamilton's will only 3 weeks before she died. According to legal papers that were leaked on fan forums but haven't been confirmed by the court yet, a new version of her will got rid of 2 long-name beneficiaries who were blood relatives and merged property rights and financial control. And only under Frank Jenkins, of course. This has raised questions. Was Lynn mentally sound when those changes were made? Were these decisions really hers? If not, who made them? Then came the shocking testimony of Annalise, a former caretaker who worked in the home for just under 2 months before quitting suddenly. In an anonymous phone interview, she said that Lynn seemed anxious when she was left alone with Frank. She grabbed my hand one time and said, "Help." It broke me. I left a week later, you know. There was a problem. Her testimony, which hasn't been proven, is now allegedly being looked over by lawyers for Lynn's family. Even though there hasn't been an official criminal investigation yet, legal experts say that the fact that there were a lot of red flags about last-minute changes to caregiving concerns and family exclusion could be reason enough for a court-ordered review. One bankruptcy lawyer even said the case was a textbook example of how to spot signs of elder abuse in an estate. Of course, the media have jumped on news. Radar Online, The Shadroom, and even mainstream sites like TMZ have started to cover the story. Every day, more and more people want the police to look more closely at both the legal documents and Frank Jenkins himself. However, since posting and then deleting his controversial video, Frank has been quiet again. His lawyer won't say anything, and reporters who tried to get in touch with him were told he's not available for questions right now. So the question isn't just what did Lynn Hamilton do? The question is whether one of the most surprising court cases in Hollywood history is about to happen over her memory. Lynn Hamilton's death has been the subject of many rumors, legal disputes, and emotional evidence. However, one group has stood out louder than ever, the fans. And they're not just sad anymore, they want someone to answer for what happened. In the days after Frank Jenkins's now famous video, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube comment sections were full of emotions that ranged from sadness to anger. To anger tags like, "Oh justice for Lynn, all what happened to Lynn and Gank Frank tell the truth," began to trend in the region in just 1 week. Thousands of people had started internet threads to break down every second of Frank's video, every word he said, and every clue that was hidden between the lines. "We grew up watching Lynn Hamilton play one of the strongest women on TV. Now she's gone." One post on X, which used to be Twitter, went popular. "There are no answers from her husband, and no one wants to say what really happened. We're not, though, being quiet." Another user shared 2 screenshots next to each other of Lynn at her last public event, a virtual fundraiser in early 2023. Compared to older pictures of her, she looked much thinner. Her voice was shaky, and her face was blank. "This woman was not okay and nobody helped her," was all that was written in the description. There has been a huge emotional reaction. People with millions of fans on TikTok are now going into great detail about Lynn's last days. Over 250,000 people watched a live stream by one creator called "Uncovering Lynn Hamilton's Final Moments" in just one night. But the feedback isn't just from regular people. A lot of famous people have said their opinions, including actors from Lynn's group who worked with her during the golden age of black television. Someone who used to be on Good Times wrote, "Lynn had grace. She had dignity. If she let her suffer in quiet, and then we let her down." Fans have also started to organize. Over 87,000 people have signed a Change.org petition asking for a formal investigation into how Lynn's estate and medical care were handled by lawyers. The title of the petition says, "We, Lynn Hamilton fans and supporters, call for openness and fairness. Her story should be told, and if she can't speak up in life, it should be heard in death." It's not just computer noise either. Effects in the real world are taking hold. Not long ago, a small group of campaigners held a calm protest in front of a Los Angeles probate court. At their sides were candles and pictures of Lynn with the words, "No silence" in her name. "Ask Frank the right things." There was a radio interview with a culture historian who studies how black women are portrayed on TV that may have been the most moving moment. Lynn wasn't just Donna on Sanford and Son. She was a role model for a whole generation of women who had never seen themselves reflected with such strength and softness, she said. If her life ended in chaos and unfair, then we have to tell her the truth. Not only as fans, but as a community. Fans aren't just sad, they're also taking action. They are keeping track of dates, comparing legal documents, and asking that the media be honest in every way. Online lawyers say that a public probe or at least a review by the probate court may not just be likely, but necessary because of the growing pressure. But here's the scary part: according to people close to the family, there may be one more piece of proof, a voice recording made by Lynn a few days before she died. It might make everything different if it's true. There were legal threats, public backlash, and a lot of unanswered questions at the height of the story. Then a new twist came out that could change the whole talk from speculation to revelation. Several people close to Lynn Hamilton's family have now said that she may have left behind a private voice recording in the days before she died. The recording is said to be an emotional message that she may have made in secret and that could reveal her mental state, her last wishes, and maybe even her fears. Since the tape hasn't been made public yet, it's already caused a lot of talk about what it might be about. What did she say? Why was it recorded in secret? And maximum chilling of all, who was she looking to guard or warn? According to one near-own family confidant, the recording became made on a small virtual tool Lynn stored hidden in her bedroom, possibly below her mattress or inside a drawer. The tool became found through a caregiver quickly after Lynn's demise and passed over to a trusted family member. For the reason that then the content material has reportedly been reviewed only by means of a small felony group and a pick few family. One own family source leaked a shocking assertion to an online tabloid. Lynn knew her time became near. She knew what was happening round her. She might not have had complete strength, but she had clarity that recording, it's her reality, it's her voice, and while the time is proper, the arena will hear it if real. This changes the whole thing, because if Lynn, ever the quiet, composed, private girl, felt the need to record her final thoughts in audio shape, then she may have known that her story would not be instructed correctly after she surpassed, and that on my own is devastating. Criminal experts say that this sort of recording, relying on its content material and readability, may be admissible in courtrooms, specifically in cases surrounding property disputes or elder care abuse. If Lynn speaks to the condition she was in, the selections being made around her, or who she did or didn't accept as true with it, could come to be the centerpiece of a case. It's already teetering on the threshold of scandal. However, here's in which it gets even darker. A few insiders declare that efforts were made by means of certain events to suppress the discharge of the recording. There are rumors of criminal threats, circle of relatives, tension, and mounting pressure from folks that won't want Lynn's unfiltered phrases out in the public. One nameless supply said, "Humans are scared. It really is how you realize it's actual. If that tape turned into meaningless, no person would care, but it matters, and someone would not want it heard." The fanatics already emotionally invested are stressful. Transparency. Numerous creators on TikTok and YouTube have launched campaigns using the hashtag Range Launch the Tape, calling on the family to honor Lynn's final act of employer her voice. Meanwhile, Lynn's longtime pastor these days spoke out in a sermon stay movement, announcing, "Lynn had her struggles, but she had her strength too, and if she left behind her truth, we should not bury it, we should pay attention." However, with criminal complications looming and potential defamation proceedings at stake, it is unclear if the recording will ever be made public. Nonetheless, one issue is clear: if this tape exists and it says what many consider it says, it could completely turn the narrative. Frank Jenkins' version of occasions might be beneath even more scrutiny. Questions about estate manipulation, scientific choices, and Lynn's treatment in her final days ought to come crashing down below the weight of her own voice, and perhaps it is the most heartbreaking a part of all. Lynn Hamilton, a lady who spent her whole life letting her characters speak for her, can also have made one very last determined try to speak for herself, and we might also in no way listen it.